Okay, here we go with um, more work on the shell and thinking about how to make a lid for it. So this is where I am so far with it. I've been working on developing the little spikes. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how to carve such things. And then I'm going to cut a lid and show you about putting a flange on the lid because there were questions today about how to do a flange. So I'm going to tilt this down to where you can see it better. The tool I'm using for carving is this little tool. This is made by Kemper, and it's a really good little tool. It's got a curved side and a kind of a little blade. So this is something you could order online. Kemper is the company, Kemper, if you want to get a tool like this for carving. Very useful. But you can also just use a good sharp knife. And the other thing I'm using a lot is my small trimming tool, which is also a Kemper tool. So these are the ridges that I started, and I'm getting them kind of roughed out. Also developing the horizontal lines a little bit, kind of figuring out where those are going, and those will get a lot more detail. So I'm going to just show you a little bit about the carving of this, and then I'll do the lid. So it's now at the firm leather hard stage, and it's dangerously close to getting too hard. So every once in a while I have been just adding a little water to it and wetting it down. And the other thing, the other major change other than carving away, is that I've been actually adding some clay. If we look again at the shell, it's got these nice spikes, and you may remember I talked about how we want always to be thinking about simplification and exaggeration. So I'm doing some of the exaggerating now. So I'm actually building up these spikes that are on the corner because I want them to really flare. And this is also where you can start departing from the thing that you're trying to copy and give it your own expression. So I decided I wanted this opening to be more dramatic, so I'm really emphasizing here. We'll see how it all turns out. But I did a little scoring and slipping, so I'll show you just the idea of that. So just adding on to these places where it seems like it would be a good idea to build them up. You always want to slip and score, and so in the process of scoring, I'm making slip by getting that wet and just squishing it until it gets soft and turns into slip. So you can always add little bits like this. And then the carving that I'm doing, again, this is where these coils that I added were just a rough approximation. And so now, in order to really get the feeling that I wanted, then things have to be carved away. And I'm getting these spikes by removing clay. And you can always come back and add more clay if it seems like you took too much off, or it's not quite the shape that you wanted. So as long as you're keeping everything moist, you can keep tinkering with it. And I'm going to recycle all of these bits of clay. That's all going to go into the bucket, and eventually you'll have enough to recycle. So, and I am going to give you a short video on how to recycle your clay at home. So I'm just working on getting these shapes cut out. And I'll probably go back over this several more times too, just for more precision. But that's the concept. Now, another thing I did was, if you recall, I had a hole here that I didn't want because I wanted to be able to push on the clay. So I closed it off, but I closed it more than actually looked good. So I carved a lot of it out, scooped a lot of it back out, because this is the shape I want it to have ultimately. Now, because it's a box, I'm going to leave this closed. If it wasn't a box, it would be fine to have a hole there. The hole did look good. So that's a thought. But what I want to show you now is how to make a lid. So you get to pick where you want the lid, and I'm looking to see how it sits. We want the lid to sit for gravity to hold the lid on, so it wouldn't make sense to put the lid on the side. It'll just fall out. So I'm going to have to put the lid up in here. Now, there are lots of choices about how you cut the lid. I would really like to keep these lines really clear, which means cutting along here. It certainly would be possible to cut a lid across this way and just have a little bitty lid that comes off, but I think in order to really make the sculpture still very expressive, I want to stay with these lines. So I'm going to cut in, and just like when you cut before, when you were slicing it open, you always have the option, as long as you keep things wet, of changing your mind. So if you cut where you didn't mean to, like that, is not what I meant to do. Okay, I gotta turn this so I can see it. You can add clay back in there. There are ways to pretend like it didn't happen. Let's see if I can lift that out. Almost. There we go. Oh, it doesn't quite want to come. I didn't cut all the way through, I think. Try some more here. There we go. Okay, so I want to pull this out very carefully so I don't break it, but could always probably stick it back together. As long as things aren't getting too dry, you can do that sort of thing. It's still stuck. There it comes. All right, so there's that piece. Now, here's what we have inside. This is the opportunity to fix things that are messy. We have to think about how the lid is going to sit. in order to decide where to put our flange. So flanges can come up from the bottom or they can come down from the top. Or they can be horizontal, and I think I'm going to do this one horizontal. We just want to be sure the lid will stay put. So that's what we have to be thinking about. Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to repair this little spot in there that looks a little thin. So I'm just going to add a little bit of clay, wetting it and scoring it. Stick just a little bit of clay there. This is your opportunity to fix a problem before it becomes a problem. And I'm going to get these scraps out of there. So you want to think about what's going to hold this lid on. And this also I'm going to just smooth it out. Depends on your shape. So you might have a flange that goes down. You might have a flange that comes up from the bottom. And in this case, I'm going to run sideways. So thinking about what's going to hold it in place. If I added a flange down this way, that really doesn't hold this lid. It would, lots of lids would be held just fine by a flange that goes down. This one is going to need something to come across. And here's where I'm going to add it. Give yourself time to get your lid set up, because this is the part that's going to take a lot of fiddling. You're going to find that, you know, it seemed like it fit perfectly and now it doesn't fit, and you just have to take your time with it and keep adjusting it until it does fit. So I'm going to take a little bit of clay, make a coil, and then just flatten that coil. Doesn't have to be very big. I'm going to come across this way. Serrated scraper is good for this. This is the one with the saw teeth. And now, just like always when you're attaching, especially because this is leather hard now, we want to have a really good connection. So you need to kind of squeeze it, press it, wiggle it a little bit. And this is not going to be a real functional box by the time I get the flange in. It's going to be a very small opening. But, you know, it's kind of just for fun to turn this into a container. It's just one of those things that potters like a challenge. Now, there's a whole genre of sculptural teapots. This could have been made into a teapot. Still could, actually. There are contests on sculptural teapots, making things that you would never guess that's what it was. But like to try something crazy. So I don't know how well you can see it. The flange is coming across. Coming across here. And I'm going here too on the other side. Trying to press it into place. It's kind of hard because there's not much space here. Wow. It's really hard to get in there. So I'm going to make the flange and then have to fiddle with it because I know it's not going to fit the first time. So it doesn't have to be very wide, but it does need to go all the way around. And that's the same with a flange that goes down or comes up. They always have to go all the way around. Seems like there's always somebody that wants to take a shortcut and just, you know, have a few little pieces in there to hold it. It's better not to do it that way. Sometimes you can get away with it, but a lot of times the lid doesn't work very well. You'd really need it to support it all the way around. Wow, this is really tricky. It's really hard to get in there. This sort of feels like, you know, when dentists clean your teeth, the way this little tool works. Okay, so now, and I pushed it in by accident, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so now we're going to lay the lid on, and like I promised you, it doesn't fit. This is your challenge. You're going to spend a lot of time messing with it to get the lid to work. So that's the idea of it, but you see my flange is too high, so I'm going to have to push it down. I'm going to have to mess with it a long time, which I'm not going to put you through the agony of watching all of that. But that is the idea of it. Now, there are certain other kinds of lids where your flange would be coming down from here, would be an extension that is there. It just depends on the shape. But a lot of times with sculptural pieces, you're going to want to put the flange down inside. Now, also my flange is really messy, and that's another thing you want to correct. You don't want to leave it messy like that. It's just good craftsmanship to finish it off cleanly. So I'm going to add here so it's very even all the way around. And I'll show you that later, but I think you got the idea now. And that's what the concept that we want, is that the lid is part of the sculpture. It really belongs as part of the sculpture. It doesn't seem like just a strange thing that you cut off somewhere, but it's really part of the whole form and will be held securely in there, which this one is not ready for that yet, but it will be. Okay, that's it, and see you next time.